Welcome everyone to Chapter 6, the Muscular System. Today we'll be diving into one of the most active and essential systems in the body. Muscles don't just give us ability to move around, they actually stabilize our skeleton. They help circulate blood and even generate heat to keep our body temperature regulated. As we go through this chapter, we'll explore the types of muscles, how they are structured, and the fascinating physiology behind contraction. We'll also tie this to exercise, performance, and some important clinical conditions. Now let's begin with the basics. Muscle tissue is everywhere in the body, found in nearly every organ. On average, muscles make up about 40% of our body weight in men and 32% in women. There are three main types: skeletal muscle, which attach to bones and allow us to consciously move; cardiac muscle, found only in the heart and responsible for pumping blood; and smooth muscle, which lines our digestive tracts, blood vessels, and other organs, working automatically. These types differ in structure and control, but they all share a common feature of contraction. We look at the human body. Skeletal muscles are organized into four groups with specific functions. On the front view, notice muscles like the masseter, which allow chewing, and the orbicularis oris, which control lip movement, important for speaking, eating, and even expression. Larger groups like the pectoralis major and biceps brachii handle arm movement and flexion at the elbow. The rectus abdominis and the external oblique form the core, helping with posture and trunk rotation. Moving down, muscles like the quadriceps extend the knee, while the tibialis anterior help lift the foot when walking. From the rear view, the deltoid raises the arms, while the trapezius and latissimus dorsi stabilize and move the shoulders and back. The powerful gluteus maximus extends the thigh, and the hamstrings and gastrocnemius coordinate leg and knee movement for walking, running, and jumping. Together, these muscles create smooth, coordinated motion across the body. So why do we need muscles? Their most obvious role is movement. Voluntary movement, like walking or picking up a pen, are under our control, while involuntary ones, like the heartbeats, occur without conscious thought. Muscles also stabilize posture, resist unwanted movement, and regulate blood vessel diameter, which directly affect blood pressure. And there's another key role. Muscles generate about 3/4 of the body's heat, which is critical for maintaining homeostasis. This makes muscle tissue a driving force in both motion and metabolism. At the core of these functions is one simple activity: contraction. Muscles are excitable, meaning they respond to signals from nerves or chemicals. Once stimulated, a muscle fiber contracts or shortens and then relaxes or lengthens. This contract-relax cycle is the foundation of everything muscles do, whether it's lifting a weight, digesting food, or maintaining posture. No matter the type, skeletal, cardiac, or smooth, they all rely on the same fundamental process. Let's zoom in on skeletal muscles, since they're the ones most directly tied to body movement. We have about 600 of them, and they often work in pairs or groups. Synergistic muscles team up to create the same movement, while antagonistic muscles oppose each other to provide balance and control. Each muscle has its origin, which anchored to a stable bone, and insertion, which attaches the bone that moves. When contraction happens, the insertion is pulled towards the origin. This setup allows the precise control and powerful leaps to find movement of our fingers. When we look inside a whole muscle, it's really an organized collection of smaller parts. A muscle is made up of bundles called fascicles, and each fascicle contains long cylindrical muscle fibers, also known as muscle cells. These fibers can be several centimeters long and have multiple nuclei because of their size. Inside of each fiber are myofibrils, which are tightly packed within the proteins actin and myosin. These proteins form the machinery that actually allow the contraction. So while muscles appear solid from the outside, at the cellular level, they're highly organized and specialized for movement. Skeletal muscle fibers are striking under the microscope. They are multinucleated and show a striated appearance because of their repeated arrangements of actin and myosin proteins. These striations are visible outlines of sarcomeres, which are the functional unit of contraction. Each sarcomere is one segment of a myofibril, and when aligned end to end, they create that striped look. This structure designed is what gives skeletal muscle both its strength and precision. It's fascinating because the patterns we see under the microscope reflect the exact mechanisms muscles use to generate movement. At the heart of the contraction is the sarcomere. It is defined by Z lines, where actin filaments anchor with myosin filaments in the middle. When contraction happens, the actin and myosins interact to shorten the sarcomere, creating force. One muscle cell contains hundreds of thousands of sarcomeres working in sequence. This is what allows a single contraction at the microscopic level to translate into a powerful movement at the whole body level. It is a perfect example of biological design, small units adding up to coordinate action. Now, how do the sarcomeres actually shorten? It all starts with nerve activation. A nerve signal triggers the release of calcium inside the muscle cell. Calcium then interacts with the contractile proteins, allowing actin and myosin to connect. As long as calcium is present, contraction continues. When the nerve signal stops, calcium is removed and the sarcomere relaxes back to its original length. This cycle, contract and relax, happens rapidly and repeatedly, which is why muscles can respond most instantly to command. The connection between nerves and muscles happens at the neuromuscular junction. Here, motor neurons release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which diffuses across the junction and binds to receptors on the muscle fiber. This generates an electrical impulse that travels along the cell and down its structure called T-tubules, spreading the signal deep into the fiber. It is electrical cascade that sets off the release of calcium and what ultimately powers the contraction. In other words, without the nerve activation, skeletal muscles cannot contract. Once the electrical impulse travels down the T-tubule, it reaches the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is where the muscle's storage site for calcium. The impulse opens channels and suddenly calcium floods into the cytoplasm of the fiber. The rise in calcium is the critical switch. It turns on the contraction. Calcium binds to the proteins on the myofiber and allows actin and myosin interactions to begin. Without this release, muscles stay relaxed, which is why calcium is often called the on-off signal for contraction. Now let's look at how the contraction actually works. This is called the sliding filament mechanism. In a resting muscle, the myosin heads are cocked back but not attached to the actin. When the contraction begins, myosin heads reach out, form cross bridges with actin, and then they pivot, pulling the actin filament towards the center of the sarcomere. After each pull, they detach, reset, and repeat the cycle. As millions of these tiny movements happen in unison, the entire sarcomere shortens, and with it, the muscle contracts. The role of calcium here is very specific. In a relaxed state, the troponin-tropomyosin complex blocks the binding sites for actin, preventing myosin from attaching. When calcium floods in, it binds to troponin, causing the complex to shift and expose those binding sites. Now myosin can grab hold of the actin and start cross-bridging cycles. Imagine this happening across hundreds of thousands of sarcomeres simultaneously. The result is a powerful, coordinated muscle contraction. To summarize, calcium is released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, binds to troponin, and shifts the troponin-myosin complex. This exposes the myosin binding sites, allowing cross bridges to form. Myosin heads pull actin inward, shortening the sarcomere. As the sarcomere shortens, so do muscle fibers, and the whole muscle contracts. It is a beautiful, orchestrated process that depends entirely on calcium's availability and energy from ATP to continue the cycle. Finally, what stops the contraction from occurring? When the nerve signal ceases, calcium is actively pumped back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This requires ATP because calcium is moving against the concentration gradient. Once calcium is removed, it is no longer binding to the troponin, and the troponin-tropomyosin complex shifts back to block the actin binding sites. Without the available sites, myosin can't form cross bridges, so the muscle relaxes. This reset is just as important as the contraction itself. Without relaxation, muscles would lock up and normal movement would be impossible. Every step of the contraction relaxation depends on ATP. During contraction, ATP energizes the myosin heads so that they can attach to actin and perform the powerful stroke. During relaxation, ATP is required again, at this time to detach the myosin heads, and so they actively pump calcium back to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So muscles aren't just using energy, they are actually working. They also burn energy to reset and prepare for the next contraction. Without ATP, the whole system would grind to a halt. This is why muscle fatigue sets in when energy stores run low. Since muscles burn ATP so quickly, they've evolved several backup systems to keep energy flowing. First, creatine phosphate acts like a quick battery pack, recharging ATP almost instantly. Next, stored glycogen can be broken down to glucose, which provides short-term energy through anaerobic metabolism. For longer efforts, muscles rely on aerobic metabolism of glucose, fatty acids, and other high-energy molecules. This layered system ensures that whether you're sprinting for seconds or cycling for hours, your muscles have the fuel they need to keep going. Not all muscles perform the same way. Some are built with large movements, like the quadriceps that extends the knee, while others are specialized for fine motor control, like the tiny muscles of the eye. Activity depends on factors such as the amount of nerve stimulation, the type of muscle fibers present, and the muscle's aerobic capacity. This variation explains why certain muscles are better suited for endurance, while others excel in producing short, explosive force. Muscles don't always contract in the same way. In isotonic contractions, the muscle shortens while maintaining constant force, producing movement, like lifting a dumbbell. In isometric contractions, the muscle generates tension without shortening so that the movement occurs, like holding the dumbbell steady without moving your arm. Both forms are essential. Isotonic contractions move our body, while isometric ones stabilize joints and maintain posture. Even standing upright requires constant isometric activity. The strength of the muscle contraction is not just about the muscle itself, but also about the nerve activation. The functional unit here is the motor unit, a motor neuron, and all of the muscle cells it controls. Large motor units like those in the thigh generate more force but sacrifice precision. Small motor units like those in the eyes provide fine motor control but less powerful. This nervous system control ensures that we can shift seamlessly from delicate tasks like writing to powerful actions like jumping using the same basic muscle system. Muscle tension, or the force a muscle generates, depends on several factors. The first is the size of the motor unit. The more cells under one neuron, the stronger the force. The second is the number of active motor units at a given time. Finally, the frequency of stimulation matters. Repeated signals from calcium levels high, which maintain contraction. This is why the nervous system plays such a critical role in muscle performance. It's not just the muscle itself, but how effectively it is being controlled. Another key idea is the all or none principle. An individual muscle cell either contracts fully or not at all. It never does a partial contraction. What changes the force is the number of cells activated and how often they are stimulated. Muscles also maintain muscle tone, a constant low-level activation that keeps the body ready for action and helps with posture. When we need more strength, the body recruits more motor units, a process called recruitment. This allows for smooth increase in force rather than a jerky movement. If we look closely at a single muscle cell's response, we see a muscle twitch, a full cycle of contraction and relaxation following a single stimulus. On a lab called a myogram, this cycle has 3 phases: the latent phase, the contraction phase, and the relaxation phase. When stimuli arrive faster than the muscle can fully relax, contraction begins to add to another, which is a process called summation. If this continues, it leads to a sustained contraction called tetanus, which is much stronger than a single twitch. Not all muscle fibers are created equal. Humans have 2 main types: slow twitch fibers and fast twitch fibers. Slow twitch fibers contract slowly and rely on aerobic metabolism and are rich in mitochondria and blood vessels, making them ideal for endurance activities like running or bicycling. Fast twitch fibers, on the other hand, contract quickly, use anaerobic metabolism, and store lots of glycogen. These are designed for short bursts of power, like sprinting or weightlifting. Most of our muscles contain a mixture, but the ratio varies from person to person. To break it down further, slow twitch fibers are often called red muscles because of their high myoglobin content, which store oxygen. They resist fatigue and are critical for posture and endurance. Fast twitch fibers are sometimes called white muscles because they have less myoglobin. They generate greater force but fatigue quickly. Genetics play a role in the proportion of fast fiber types, which is why some athletes naturally excel at endurance while others thrive in strength and power sports. Training can influence these properties, but only to a certain extent. Muscles are highly adaptable, and training changes them depending on the type of exercise. Strength training or resistance training focuses on short, intense efforts. This builds more myofibers, especially in fast twitch fibers, increasing muscle size and strength, though not the actual number of muscle cells. On the other hand, aerobic training, activities like running, swimming, or cycling, build endurance. It increases blood supply to muscles, boosts mitochondria, and raises myoglobin content, making the muscle more efficient to use oxygen. Together, these adaptations explain why training programs are tailored to specific goals. Now let's shift to muscles we don't consciously control. These are your cardiac and your smooth muscles. Both are involuntary and can contract without nerve stimulation, though their activity is influenced by the autonomic nervous system. Cardiac muscle cells are joined by intercalated discs which contain gap junctions that allow neighboring cells to stimulate each other. This makes the heart function as a coordinated pump. Specialized pacemaker cells set the rhythm of contraction, keeping the heart beating continuously without conscious thought. Structurally, cardiac muscle cells look somewhat like skeletal muscle. It has a sarcomere with actin and myosins arranged in striations, giving it a striped appearance. Smooth muscle, however, is different. Its filaments are arranged in crisscross bundles rather than nice, thin, neat sarcomeres. Because of this, smooth muscle lacks striations and appears uniform under the microscope. Despite the difference, gap junctions in smooth muscle still allow cells to coordinate contraction, which is critical for function like moving food through the digestive tract. The three muscle types also differ in how quickly and how long they can actually contract. Skeletal muscles is the fastest. It can contract and relax within a fraction of a second, making it perfect for voluntary movement. Cardiac muscle contracts at a moderate pace, which is ideal for steady pumping action. Smooth muscle contracts very slowly but is able to remain partially contracted almost all of the time without fatigue. This sustained activity is vital for functions like maintaining blood vessel tone or moving food along the intestines. Unfortunately, muscles are also vulnerable to disease. One example is muscular dystrophy, a group of genetic disorders caused by progressive weakness. The most severe form is known as Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. It is caused by a defect in the dystrophin protein, which normally stabilizes the muscle cell membrane. Without it, calcium leaks into the cell, activating enzymes that damage proteins. Over time, muscle fibers are replaced by connective tissues and fat, leading to loss of muscle function. This primarily affects boys and often limits life expectancy to around 30 years. Another serious condition is tetanus, caused by the infection with Clostridium tetani. The bacteria enters the body through a wound and releases a potent toxin. This toxin overstimulates muscles, causing them to contract forcibly and uncontrollably. If untreated, tetanus can be fatal because of the respiratory muscles lock up, preventing breathing. Fortunately, tetanus is preventable with vaccination, which provides long-term protection. This is a reminder of how vulnerable muscles can be when pathogens interfere with their normal control mechanisms. Not all muscle problems are life-threatening, but many are common. Muscle cramps are sudden painful contractions often caused by dehydration, ion imbalance, or fatigue. Pulled muscles occur when fibers are overstretched or torn, often during sudden movements or inadequate warm-up. These injuries range from mild to severe and can take time to heal. They highlight how delicate the muscles are, even though they normally generate incredible forces and endurance. Sometimes it's not the muscle itself, but the surrounding tissue that causes problems. Fascia is the connective tissue that surrounds and supports muscle. When inflamed, this condition is called fasciitis. A common form is plantar fasciitis, which affects the soles of the foot. And it causes sharp heel pain, especially during the first steps of the day. Though not as severe as muscular dystrophy or tetanus, fasciitis can significantly affect mobility and quality of life if left untreated.